That might be a bit better. See if I can remove this retaining ring. And that might be a vein hug. Okay, we'll do that later then. This is getting worse. Perhaps I can sluice the stuff off with a constant stream of black flag. Do you think that'd be a good idea? Pop that back down in that tray for a minute. And look at this filthy mess I have in front of me. What temperature do domestic freezers get down to? I think it's about -30 or something, isn't it? These tropical ants probably didn't enjoy a week at -30. They certainly didn't spontaneously burst back into life once they were returned to room temperature. Mind you, the black flag might have had something to do with that too. I can't say that I've never seen insects or the signs of obvious previous infestation of insects in cameras before, but previously it's just been an odd fly carcass or something of that nature. A very desiccated little moth or something, but I've never ever seen anything quite like this. Pop that back in tray number 1. Now my brush is all covered in stuff, carcasses. See if I can get this stuff swept into a heap and off that tray into a bag. Oh, it's not good, is it? I know. Some kitchen cleaner and paper towels, I think, are in order. one of those wonderful kitchen products. You know the sort. Smells nasty and guaranteed to kill 99% of known living organisms. Right, that has promise. I think removing the remaining mechanical components in this body might be a useful thing at this stage. So I'm watching carefully here. This plate is the shutter release and it has a return spring. 2 screws hold that shaft down in place. Our Film Advance spool is held down here from memory. Will that shaft come out? Oh, okay, there's a little lock screw at the top of that shaft. So before I break something, we'll try backing that screw out. Oh, wonder of wonders, it came loose. Take the gear off the top, then that centre tube. The shaft comes out from the bottom of the camera and the spool comes out from inside the back of the camera. Our sprocket shaft looks like it has a pin through the shaft here, which if I push it high enough I can possibly push out. Possibly. Let's rotate that, see if it wants to push out the other way. I doubt that it's tapered, but it may be mutilated on one end. Doesn't want to come out. I'll have to leave it. However, that does give me freedom to get to this mess a bit better. And having the brush soaked in kitchen cleaner is helping unstick these sticky little ant remains and eggs. Is that baffle plate loose? It is. Good. Oh, I should charge them twice as much for all the bioremediation work required. There's a big pocket of filth here I've got to scoop out. What I'd really like to do with this, I think, is run it under a hot tap, but I suppose that would sort of defeat the purpose. Alright. Alright, let's move some of this componentry to the semi-clean pile. I hope that when I get to the end of this job I don't discover that there's some major component broken and that all of this was in vain. That's disgusting. The state of that. Can't even get the bloody things off the screws. More wiping up. Jesus, don't do that. Right, I'll bring you back when I've got things a little bit cleaner, I think. Well, I have the body at least clean now. I still wanted to get that sprocket shaft out if I could. It's held in with a circlip at the bottom. There's a collar guide at the bottom there which was held in with this screw. And then I can see that there's a circlip or an E-clip or a C-clip depending on what you call them, which is holding that shaft and the spring in at that point. I really need to see if I can get that loose. Looking to see if there's any more rubbish in this camera body. We're down to very little now. Certainly no ants or ant eggs, it's just dirt and dust by the looks of it. Now how I cleaned this body in the end was I sprayed it down inside and out with one of those nasty kitchen all-purpose cleaners and left it to soak for a bit, and then it got cleaned in a bowl of very hot soapy water and rinsed under a hot tap and dried with a hairdryer. So it's been effectively cleaned, and you know, if you didn't know any better you wouldn't think it had come from the same camera. I just want to wipe around those inside edges with some naphtha and a cotton bud and see if the other dirty marks will come out. I think I'm going to follow much the same procedure with all the other componentry, is that I'll clean it down with kitchen cleaner, hot soapy water, and then dry it and reassemble everything. But while I'm here, I might as well have the camera completely to pieces, I think. Right, I'll see if I can get that circlip off. I'd needn't have fought all along. It turns out that I was able to manipulate this shaft, tip it over and bring it out through the major hole in the top of the body. It didn't have to come out here, so I didn't have to separate it. Now I've got it out, of course, I can probably separate it and make sure it's all clean. Oh, well, that's a trap for young players. I'll know better next time. Now I'll see if I can get that circlip off now that I've got good access to it. Yes, that came loose. There's a bit of corrosion around the end of that circlip, that's why it was reluctant to come off. But now I have access to that shaft and I can clean it. I can see that there's a little bit of surface corrosion roughness on there. I'm just feeling what that feels like. No, it's just very, very minor. Won't affect anything. But there's certainly dried grease, and that needs to come out. And just checking the state of that sprocket, making sure that that's good. It appears fine. It's only supported on the spool, on this shaft right at the bottom end there. I'll put a little bit of grease on that and reassemble that. So we had our spring, which keeps the tension on it, and then the circlip, which clips into that groove on the shaft. And there we have it. I'll put a little touch of grease on the top of that where that pin drops down into the groove to drive this. It's disconnected by the rewind button, and that's what allows you to rewind your film. That looks good. I'll see if that can be put back in the same way it came out. It should be possible now that I know the secret. So that came out of that hole in the body. Yes, no problem at all. And here we have the bush that held it in place at the bottom of the camera. And that also presumably sets the height of it. So I better get that centered so that it's not sitting too low or too high. Needs to go up a bit from there. The sprocket should fall pretty much in the middle of that these notches here and here. It's a bit low. That appears to be just right. Do that screw up. Just check my... No, I think that's a bit low. I want to take that up a bit. Let's make that bush absolutely level with the body and see how that looks. That looks very good. So that's our rewind back in the body, and the body nice and clean, ant free, and ready for a little bit of reconstruction. So the base of the camera, I'll reconstruct that first. And so first of all, I am going to deal with the other components that came out of here, which was the shutter release, and we can put back in the take-up spool and the film advance shaft if I clean those components first. I'll get those cleaned and then we'll be back into it. Alright, let's put this take-up spool and things back in the camera, I suppose. Gather these bits up. Right, so where do we start? With this take-up spool. Just going to wipe the end of that there. It looks like it's got dirty dried grease there. I'll apply just a little bit of grease there, fresh grease. Spool goes in, the open end goes towards the top of the camera. The shaft. That's got a collar on it, which serves to fix this in place basically. This shaft has got a couple of little small holes near detents where those collars lock into place, where the screws on the collars lock into place. So that's all looks fairly straightforward. I'll just run a little bit of grease on there. That goes into the bottom, into the spool. We have the plate that holds it in place at the bottom of the camera. I'll just run a wipe of grease on the inside edge of that. There was a shim that sat on top of that shaft. Then this piece sat on top, and the shaft was guided by that little hole in the middle of that bush. So 2 screws in here. They were the shorter of the 4 screws I took from this position. The longer 2 screws are for the shutter release arm mechanism. Let's see if we can get this in place. Do those screws up tight. That shaft is all firmly in position. There's a spring that goes down inside there. I'm just going to put a very light smear of grease on there, mostly to protect it against corrosion. And the central part of the spool, it's got a little tab on it which drops into a notch on top of the take-up spool. That pops in there. Now that's quite a heavy spring preload there. And on top of that goes our gear. Now I can't remember which way up that goes. Oh, it goes to the gear teeth down, I think. Now the shaft, as I said, has a little detent in it, a little hole that the lock screw locks into. So I've got to make sure I've got that positioned where I can see it. And it's just facing this way. I'll turn my gear around until I've got it facing where I need it to be, which should be about there. That tab's not pressed down into the... that's better. Now if I run that screw up, hopefully it'll pick up the hole in the shaft and hold everything in place. That's the idea. And it looks like it's worked. Good. So I'll just find another screwdriver and check that that screw is really it's nice and tight now. It's good. Alright, so we got that back in. So that means our sprocket and our spool are back in place in the camera body. We've got the shutter release mechanism that goes in the bottom there. And basically how that works is there's a shaft that comes right down through the middle of the film advance and is pressed this way when you press the shutter release. And it sits like this. So as you press the shutter release, this is lifted, which in turn lifts this tab, and that tab pulls down on the arm on the shutter, which releases the shutter. So there's the shaft that runs across here, and the shaft also has a return spring on it. And I've got to remember how that spring went. It's got to push that arm up, so it must have sat on the arm like that. Oh, I'll have to go back and review my video. to get this in place, first of all, I want to put a little wipe of grease in here so that that moves smoothly. We have our spring, and the spring sits on the shaft like this. Let's get this into place. So that the spring, the long end of the spring is at the back, the short end is at the front. And if I had an extra pair of hands, it would be a great thing. But I don't. I've got to get this screw down in position to hold that shaft down. Check that that spring is all okay. There we have it. Do those screws up and I'll keep that shaft in place. So basically, when the pin on the shutter release comes down through here, it presses on this plate, which of course pulls down on this plate and pulls down and releases the shutter. So the base of the camera is pretty much dealt with. Well, that's good. I can gather up, I've got my base plate. Now that's been cleaned and washed. I'm going to use some solvent now and see if I can get rid of the last traces of the old gasket and all of that other, not gasket, the leatherette, and get that surface nice and clean, and that can go back on the camera.